Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and in this episode, I welcome Gavin Crump. Gavin is an architect, BIM consultant, educator, and content creator based in Sydney, Australia. After working on some of the largest healthcare projects in the Southern Hemisphere, Gavin transitioned from production to coordination to BIM management, and eventually into consulting. Along the way, he built an engaged global audience through his Aussie BIM Guru YouTube channel, which you've probably heard of, sharing technical tutorials and insights on Revit, Dynamo, Python, C#, and more. Today, Gavin continues to work inside the AEC industry as a digital practice lead at Architectus, helping to shape the digital workflows and strategic tooling that support project delivery at scale. In this episode, we explore his personal and professional evolution from an introverted graduate architect who stumbled through his first Revit test to become one of the most visible and trusted voices in the AEC technology space. We talk about programming as a creative outlet, the surprisingly emotional experience of automating his first workflow, and what it takes to build a public brand rooted in generosity and curiosity. Gavin also shares candid thoughts about building for delivery instead of design, the often overlooked value of middle-tier roles in architecture firms, and why he believes architects still deserve the best tooling to do their best work. A key theme from this conversation, which connects to many other episodes, although with an opposite outcome from many previous guests on the podcast, including myself as one example, is Gavin's intentional decision to stay in the AEC industry rather than jumping to tech. While many with his skill set have left for startups or consultancies, Gavin chose to remain and make his impact from within. It's a choice that reflects a deep sense of alignment with architecture's mission and a challenge to firm leadership. If we want to keep top talent, we have to create the conditions for them to thrive right here. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. You can find them directly in your podcast app if you're a paid member of Troxel Plus, and if you're a free member, you can find them at the website. Lastly, you can really help the podcast by sharing the episodes with your colleagues and by commenting on and sharing my LinkedIn posts. You can also leave a comment over on YouTube and engage with me and the other listeners. I actually wonder if Gavin will leave a comment on this episode like he has been doing so well on many of the other ones. Anyways, head over to YouTube and see if he did. Also, a hint that many of you don't know about, hang out until the end of the episode for my wrap-up where I'll share my key takeaways. All right, so now without further ado, I bring you my conversation with the Aussie BIM guru, aka Gavin Crump. I had this idea to start off this episode. I mean, you are the Aussie BIM guru, right? And one of the things we keep seeing on LinkedIn is that BIM is dead. Dead. Nails in the coffin. AI, we've moved on. No, and I just think it's kind of like, are you serious? Architects don't move on from anything quickly, right? And let alone adopt it, but then move on from it after they have adopted it. And I'm sure you have. Well, first, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here. Like I was saying before we kicked off, it's surreal to be on a podcast I've listened to for probably the better part of almost 4 years. I think you've been running about 5 years now, right? So I think I joined.
Yeah, 4.5 at this point, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's surreal, but thanks for me on board. But it's a good introduction. BIM is dead. Yep, it's all over the socials at the moment.
It is.
I think there's a lot of marketing standing on the corpse of BIM that seems to be the primary motivator behind it. But I mean, BIM is changing. That's, I guess, the ultimate sort of retort that people seem to make. It's still very much here. It's very much my 9 to 5, or some people's 5 to 9 in some cases. So, yeah.
Just when you're trying to fix a problem. How are those elements hidden? Let's count the ways.
Yeah, there's like 26 ways. I used to have a
I
chart.
think there's more than that. I think there's probably double that is my
26 ways
guess.
that we have discovered as BIM managers. But I used to have a chart where
Right.
the last step was consult the BIM manager, and I think they used to turn the chart upside down and start there.
Well, let's go. Instead of going down this provocative, clickbaity headline kind of approach, tell us about you and where you've come from and how you've kind of found your way in the architecture and AEC industry, but also the technology side of things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my career journey is not too dissimilar to a lot of people I know of my age. So we sort of entered the world just after the GFC, from a professional perspective. So I think I finished university around 2012. I'd just done a pretty traditional bachelor's, master's of architecture, straight run for 5 years, and hadn't managed to land any work along the way. I had tried, but it was a tricky time. And luckily, I landed a role on a major hospital in my hometown of Adelaide. So this was a $2.2 billion project at the time, which I think was the most expensive in the Southern Hemisphere, and they were using Revit to deliver it. So we had about maybe 50 people in the same office for this project, and it just taught me so much about the value of software for collaboration, communication, and just making sure that things are being delivered on time and well. And I sat next to the BIM manager as well, so he actually gave me a chance. I failed my Revit test miserably. I somehow got us so far zoomed out in the view that he didn't even know where we were. And I said, "Well, technically you don't know either, so I passed, right?" And I and I
Are you
passed.
within 2 miles of the origin? I think.
It was something like that. I think I zoomed out accidentally, and then I drew two things that were tiny, and you couldn't see them on the screen. And he's like, "What's going
Right.
on here?" And yeah, I think that's how I got the job. But from there, I guess I realized that this was probably something I wanted to do for a career as well.
Hmm.
I'd done a very traditional architectural education where I think we used Revit for one tutorial, and that was it. So I'd use SketchUp, AutoCAD, 3D Max, bit of I think Enscape was just coming out then, and I was playing with that. But, that was really the closest I got to BIM. But this project just did completely 180'd my perspective of what I thought a career path could be for me. I saw the BIM manager and I said, wait, this is like completely different to what the universities told us architecture could be. And sort of gradually worked my way from delivery-based roles to coordination-based roles to eventually a management role. When I flew to Sydney in Australia I think that was 2015, where I'd been given a bit of an opportunity at quite a young age, and wasn't quite as experienced as it probably could have been or needed to be at the time. But I learnt a lot very quickly about management, communication, the realistic side of BIM, having to make it work as a company and a business. Licensing, cost, budgets, all those things that come with it. But I took a step back into coordination roles, recognizing that I sort of lacked project experience at a coordination level. So I moved to HDR and then Woods Bagot, and eventually moved into consulting. But through that time, really built up, I guess, more experience with coordinating with engineers, managing BIM at the project level. So not necessarily focusing on libraries and templates as much as everyday user needs. And in that time, I just learned that like the users, they have to do a lot of really hard work and a lot of really manual work. And this thing called Dynamo came along, and which I saw you had Ian on the other week for, and it just completely 180 how I looked at BIM.
Hmm.
Suddenly we can automate a lot of things, and I sort of picked that up into my skill set, and then Grasshopper, and eventually PyRevit, and more recently C Sharp, and sort of found my way more into sort of a computation slash automation management role with companies and consulting that I worked with. So it's been a pretty wild journey, very focused around software, but also the realistic nature of the work that we do. So I've tried to really keep in touch with, I guess, the trenches that I know people are in, that I've been in
Yeah.
myself, and trying to pull them out and help them out. And somewhere along the way, I made a YouTube channel as well. So that was sort of my way to sort of broaden my network and meet more people and share my knowledge beyond the four walls of a company. But that's sort of it in a nutshell, I guess. But yeah, happy to dive in.
I think it's interesting that you started with like you got hired because you could sufficiently break the Revit. Good job. I mean, that's a great way to start. And because it's like people break it every single day, all the time, right? And then you have to figure out how to dig yourself out of that trench, as you said, right? And it seems like the trench only gets deeper. I mean, you can break it harder and harder in so many more ways than you could before, right? And it just that's an interesting kind of perspective about it. This introduction that you had to programming through visual programming. I mean, and now you've kind of gone several steps beyond that. But I'm just curious of what that felt like to you. You said it kind of broke how you thought about it, or flipped it upside down. So maybe go a little bit deeper into that, because I bet a lot of audience members who listen to this show are probably come from a similar kind of set of circumstances where it's like, when that, I mean, obviously it's been out for a while now, right? And but back then there was very little available online, and it was just really for you to tinker or scour the forums or find the right people to chat with or talk to. But it's quite different than it is today. And I mean, kind of story time mode, right? But it's like, what was it actually like when you first got into programming and the visual programming side of things to operate Revit and Rhino?
Yeah, I mean, visual programming spoke to me just at the process level so strongly when I came across it. I mean, I used to do a lot of highly repetitive manual work at systems level. So things like creating families, adding parameters one by one, and then doing that again for 100 more families, like super manual stuff that was just
Mm.
like, in my head, I knew that this isn't the way. There's got to be a better way to do this. And I think the first task I automated using Dynamo was automatically numbering doors based on the rooms that they relate to. A classic, first task to automate. And that was something that people literally right next to me on my project were doing manually as I tried to automate it. I sort of went, everyone stop. Like, I've just
Yeah.
figured this out. And yeah, I
Stop,
just,
sync, close out, right? Let me do this. I got this.
yeah,
Right?
it was such a change in how I looked at it, not only just for me, but for other people. Now I had the ability to give other people these things that I could do at a system and methodic level, but not automatically. But now, not only can I do this for me, I can give this to other people. And I think that was the part that excited me the most. And I'd sort
Mm.
of done visual programming before, but hadn't realized I had. Like, I used to develop sort of Warcraft 3 custom video game maps, and they had it's called a trigger editor, where you had conditions and actions, and you sort of worked upon groups of units. So you might say, if you got hit by this unit, do X damage, and you could sort of program behaviors. And I never really thought about it as programming for some reason. When I did it, it just felt like a game. It wasn't really programming to me, but I instantly recognized in Dynamo, oh wait, these are like concepts I'm familiar with. Not at a visual level necessarily, but at a process level, I immediately understood, a group of units could be like a group of rooms in Revit, and programming upon them. And it just suddenly, there was a bit of a switch in my head where I went, wait a second, this is like this. I mean, I wish I'd got on earlier. I think Dynamo's been around since like almost 2011. I think
Mm.
I was really just getting properly into it around 2016. I think is when I first really became aware of it. I mean, I would have loved to have been there at day one with all the original, the OGs like John Pearson and all them.
Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe not. I mean, it would
yeah.
have been a lot more broken than
Oh yeah.
how you found it. That word keeps coming up already in this. It was a short into. We're not even that far into this episode, and the word "broken" has come up so many times. It probably got to work its way into the title somehow. But this idea of wiring up nodes and like finding the nodes, dropping them on the canvas, wiring them up, and I mean, to me, like there's a super strong analog, right? When I was like a kid and taking apart the radio and then trying to put it back together, and we didn't have cell phones. We didn't take a picture of what it looked like when it was together so that we knew how to put it back together. And there was no manual. This was just, we're playing around. And it was like, Grandpa doesn't want the AM radio anymore. Okay, cool. I'm taking it apart. And then I'm going to take it all the way apart. And then I'm going to try to put it back together and actually physically wiring up components. And oh, that didn't work. Okay, pull it apart, try it again. And something about that kind of analogy of, I mean, it's still, there's still something manual to it, right? I mean, and so different than writing a line of code. And for me, as a visual person, as an architect, and as a designer, just made so much more sense
Mm.
to play and experiment in that
Yeah.
space to see what I could do, and failing way more than succeeding, right? For sure,
Mm.
when I
Oh
was
yeah.
doing it. But
Yeah.
then it's like, okay, well, who do I talk to about that? Who knows who can I go to? Who can I send this to? Then they can just fix it and send it back to me. And like that portability aspect of it, like you're saying, you could deploy it or give it to somebody else on your team to hit run, right? Or noodle with your layout and come back with something better or different or whatever. I think there was just something so novel about all of that. And it was like, it's those kinds of things to me that still get me excited about computing, right? Because it's like, wow, computers are super powerful. They can do, and it's so funny how many layers of abstraction have been built on top of that incredible power to make it easy and to make it accessible and to do all these. And then you do something like that and you're like, this is real computer. I mean, okay, so another analogy time is like rock climbing. Like I go to the climbing gym with my 23-year-old, and like he can climb way harder than me, right? But there's some things that I can do that he just doesn't have the experience with yet, as far as like a technique or a type of move or something. But there are certain climbs that feel like rock climbing, and there are a lot of climbs that don't feel. And so my analogy is like, oh, this really felt like rock climbing, outdoor, natural. It felt like, even though it wasn't. And that to me is something like using a tool like Dynamo or Grasshopper. It's just like, oh, this feels like computing, right? It's like when I used to hand code a website or something like that, and it would render in the browser. It's like, holy crap, it worked. And to me, I've always kind of loved that that process that you go through when you wire it up and it produces something that you were trying to produce. It and maybe not more than not, but when it does, it's like, oh, this is computing. I don't know. There's something visceral about that.
Yeah, it's tinkering, I guess. Yeah, like I've always been a tinkerer. Anything I'm given, I'll play with.
Mm.
I've pulled things apart for fun sometimes. I mean, I'm a huge Lego fan. I used to love pulling all my sets apart and figuring out what we could do with them and combine them into. But yeah, it was just this fun. Like you said, it's fun, right? It's just computation is such a broad spectrum of people and ways of thinking and doing, and suddenly you find yourself almost in sync with like other industries and other people that you would have almost had nothing in common with if not for the
Mm.
programming being the connecting factor. So like I could talk to my friends that were doing, Python in completely different industries, and we could suddenly have a really fun conversation about programming syntax and logic and use cases. And I found things that they were doing, and I'm like, wait, I can use this. Like, this is useful. Like, I can actually. They found like an Excel library that was way better than the one I was using, and suddenly we're trading, fun and experience, and we're sort of almost tinkering together. So I found it was a really good connector like that. I mean, I did a course with Harvard. They did do a CS50 beginners free course, and they literally teach you about binary is the first thing they teach you. They start at the ones and the zeros, and they literally abstract you up a layer at a time. So you come to really see and appreciate, like you said, just how much history you're engaging with in computation when, and we're like, 50 layers above this when we're in Dynamo. There's so many things. There's like binary, assembly. Then I think you get to see at that point. But then like all the libraries and the choices, the decisions that people made historically, like, this Unicode represents 5, this represents A. It's like those encoding conventions that people had to agree on at a global level. It's such an amazing thing to, I guess, be engaging with, even just for that reason. So it's a really fun and interesting paradigm that, takes you outside the industry almost in your scope and perspective. Mm.
Let's take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about AVAIL. Is your team struggling to find the BIM assets they need? AVAIL's content management system simplifies access to all of your firm's content in one easy-to-use platform. No matter where your files live or what type of files they are, you can easily search and access them from AVAIL. Now, designers can consistently find and reuse all types of content. So what does that mean? Well, standards compliant models and drawings are easier to create. The documentation process is less chaotic. New hires are easier to onboard. Projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. You get the idea. Visit getavail.com to try AVAIL for free and request a free demo. That's getavail.com, GETAVAIL.com. My thanks to AVAIL for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now let's get back to the conversation. I think when you made me think about how like talking to your friends, and you obviously have very nerdy friends, right? You're talking about Python, and you're yeah in different industries, and it's like sharing that kind of stuff, and that's awesome. I like being able to go outside of your close group and say, how are you solving this problem, and not even it's not even the same problem that you have, but what they've found maybe still applies in some way. But I was thinking about I watched this YouTube video about the thing that Google just came out with, this A2A, agents to agents kind of a thing, and building on top of this MCP. So it's all this AI stuff. So just bear with me for this one short tangent. But I think it's really interesting because this idea now is that like software has always been written to do a thing, right? And it's explicit in that way. It's like we write the code to accomplish these things, and of course people have to come up with workarounds and use these apps to do things that maybe the designers didn't intend for or what didn't think of or whatever. I mean, we've all been there, right? But now that game is going to seriously change in not too distant future, where these agents can discover on their own these other agents and then collaborate and come up with solutions to do. I think that's wild, and it's like again, kind of looking back at the history of what it's taken to get to that point is absolutely incredible. I mean that progression that many people my age and older and younger. I mean we've witnessed that happen from my first Apple IIe computer, Apple's or my Commodore 64 bytes of memory, bytes, like it's crazy, right? And to see where that's gone, starting with basic programming to, I mean, now we're talking A to A, right? Like absolutely wild kind of stuff, and it makes me think like people are going to be they're building these things that have APIs and they can talk to other things, and there's going to be software writing software to bridge the gaps between those things, and that just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, yeah, mine too. I mean, I will admit I'm aware of a lot of this stuff, but I still have no idea how a lot of it actually works behind the scenes. I'm trying to that's more what gets me excited. I like to find out. Okay, like tell me all the dumb stuff that is behind this to make it be smart. That's
Mm,
part of what I enjoy with AI, but appreciating that there is still, all those abstraction layers behind this that eventually goes back down to very rudimentary principles. Because a lot of people look at it and go, "It's magic." I'm like, no, no, it's just a lot of work that's like come
right.
together to build this system. So and I do try to keep that, I guess, as the underpinning thing that I relate with AI is like at the end of the day, it's still just code. Like we have to remember that, it emulates intelligence, but to me, it isn't intelligence in itself, but how you employ it and use it and interface with it, that's where the intelligence lies. So I think agents are going to be a game changer, and I hope they are, because I see a lot of tasks people do in our industry that aren't like architecture, they aren't engineering, they aren't construction, they're busy work that could be better spent doing what people actually want to do as their role. So I'm hopeful that we will see, a severe amount of impact from agents. Even if I'm no longer coding, I don't mind as long as there's meaning to the relationship we have with this technology and how we
Hmm.
deploy it, and do we still have agency over our work. To me, that's the important part. But it's an exciting time to be around too. Even for me, I saw the internet kick off really big time in 1995, and to me, that was probably the last really like, wow, like this is a game changer. Maybe the cloud. The cloud was another pretty big moment in my time, but this is definitely one of those. Okay, I'm here for
Hmm.
this moment, sort of things. Even
Right,
if it is Skynet.
right. I'm curious if you could kind of tell the story about how, because you talked about breaking Revit and getting hired and saying, oh, like this might be a path for me. I'm curious like how that happened, because you went to traditional architecture school, like you said. You had a very tiny bit of Revit. Obviously, you can't like there's a disconnect between the industry and education when it comes to training for software so that you can get a job to do a thing. I think a lot of universities like we don't care about the software. We care about the ideas, right? Especially in design schools and things like that. But um and so you failed the test, right? And at the same time you saw this opportunity. Like and I'm why did that land like that for you?
It's a good, really good question. I think to me, the first really big moment is just when I realized the amount of systemization that was available. I'm a real systems geek. Like I love taking things that don't work and making them work, or
Hmm.
building a framework that helps other people understand something that might be more complex otherwise. And being on such a large project, we broke this model down into, I think it was like 30 sectors in plan, and then they were broken into chunks of levels. And there was so much systems management across, hundreds of models. And I really, I mean, I still talk to him occasionally. My hat off to the BIM manager. He really gave me this window into the industry that I guess I'd never seen at university, because we were just doing drawings, we were pushing out renders. It was a very different culture, and I never
Working by
really,
yourself most of the time, right? Like
yeah, yeah, like
95% of the time, probably.
like
Yeah.
even seeing work sharing for the first time was like, whoa, like this is completely different to what we had before. And I think that's why Revit has such an edge. It's got that work sharing system down pat. But that to me was even just a game changer, to see that you can just push things back and forth to each other like GitHub. It sort of introduced me to Git logic, I guess, at that point, and that was just such a game changer too. So I just saw I guess, a better use case for technology than I'd ever experienced before. And I've always loved technology. I've always been the person that breaks the family computer and fixes it. So naturally, I was just inclined to follow the tech where I found it. But I think they're the main triggers. And I think too, I did recognize that that was going to be the thing that would probably accelerate my career. If I jumped on this, it would probably be the changer in my career. Whereas architecture itself, it doesn't change too much as a profession. It's more the things around it that seem to change. That's at least my observation over the years. And I could see the potential for stagnation in my career path. I'm not a natural communicator. I'm not an extrovert. So I could see that there were going to be challenges for me in that profession if I stuck with the traditional, you know, aim for the director spot sort of career pathway. And I saw this is a way around the industry that still keeps me in touch with it, but is more in tune with me, the way I communicate, types of people that I sort of resonate most with professionally. And I saw that as also another offering that it gave me.
So, and then it sounds like you kind of had a foot in like the production side, and then the I hate to say technical side because I think there's a
That's
lot of
good.
technical production, right? So it's like you, but you know what I mean. It's like the tech side, let's call it that. And so you kind of went back and forth, like you said, you wanted to go back into production to get more experience on projects directly and like what users are experiencing and the kinds of things that break and have to be fixed on a daily basis. And then you eventually ended out in the consulting side of things and teaching like through your YouTube channel and I'm sure you've done courses and all kinds of things, but I'm like navigating even that kind of differentiation. How did that happen for you? Like where how did you determine that the value for what you were, because I think both of those kind of lend themselves to the personality type that you even discovered, right? And I think that's what happens even in school, right? It's like design, 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 and then you realize pretty quickly like there's a small percentage of people who are really good at communicating. They're not afraid to get up in front of an audience and share their ideas and be bold and do the and that really kind of lends itself better to an extrovert, for example, or maybe an ambivert, maybe somebody who can do both, right? But and then there's like these other roles, and there aren't that many. I mean, as far as we were taught when I went to school, there aren't that many options, right? So if you're more introverted and technical, like there's a technical side to architecture and drafting, and eventually that became BIM and all these things, but it was like now there's a lot more paths, right? And but if we just kind of keep it in these big buckets, you still kind of had a determination to make between technical architecture and technical support role. I don't know how you what the
Mm.
words you use to describe it, but
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. A lot of my career would definitely have been focused on the delivery side, which is not necessarily, the large side of architecture. Like everyone wants to design, not that many people want to deliver. It's a bit of a like, necessary evil for some people.
mm-hmm.
But I guess I just saw that was where the sheer amount of waste was being produced in our industry. I sort of recognized that quite quickly, that that was where most of the things that went wrong. So to me, I think, well, if I'm systematic and I target the side where I can see all the problems, like that's where they're going to want the solutions. So it sort of naturally lined up. I did rediscover design and technology for the purpose of design a bit later in my career. So probably around 2020, just before 2020, I really got deeper into Rhino,
mm.
because I saw there were quite a lot of architects that were really passionate about this software. And in a BIM management role, I didn't want to be that guy that just says it's Revit or bust. Like I said, no, we need to support more than just one platform. Like you can't just do everything in one platform. And I want to let people use the platforms they want to, but give them systems and frameworks regardless of where they are. So Grasshopper was sort of my sort of my rediscovery of design and computational design reintroduced me to different ways of approaching architecture from a technological standpoint. But yeah, for the vast majority of my career, I would say delivery was my focus, and it's where I began. My first role, I like keynoted for about a year, so I just tagged, and almost went crazy. But in that process, sort of realized the methods and the systems that are required to deliver large projects. So,
Wow. Yeah, right. There's so much manual that kind of tedious manual stuff. I could see how they could drive you absolutely crazy. Uh, so you said you kind of discovered Rhino at that point. When I went to school, okay, so I keep going back to this kind of my story part of it. There was no, I mean, there was Rhino, but it wasn't used for architecture at all. And then you kind of discovered that, oh, there's like this thing that people really love. What did you find in that process for that?
I mean, a big part of it was actually the graduate culture. That's how I really engaged with it, at
Mm,
least at the business level, because most of the seniors weren't really Rhino users, like you said, they weren't really familiar with it. It hadn't really been the thing when they were studying, but we just recognized that nearly every graduate was coming in with like zero Revit experience and didn't want to use Revit in design either. They wanted to use, more fluid programs, and they all knew Rhino. Because I worked in Sydney at this time, and the universities over there are all very, very focused on Rhino and Grasshopper in their education efforts and technology. And I guess I recognized that was my way to sort of re-engage with that layer of the business. When you deal with delivery, you're often dealing more with middle management and senior technicians that you don't necessarily capture the full range of people. But I found that was really my way to re-engage with the broader company. And I guess Rhino for me too actually was like freeing for me as well, because having used Revit for so long, I recognized its limitations and where it didn't actually necessarily deliver what we needed. So like if we're dealing with a really large cityscape as a mesh, like you're not going to import that into Revit. It's just not going to happen. And the first time I loaded the city of Sydney into Rhino, I just went, whoa, like that was like, it was like not even a minute to get this thing
didn't
in.
break a sweat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and I went to export, and there's like 50 file formats you can export as, and I'm like, whoa, I'm so used to it's Revit or Revit, and that's it.
Like three.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it actually begun for me as just like a file format processing environment, but then I sort of went,
Hmm.
wait a second, there's a lot more to this. Like it's sort of like a super SketchUp to me, and how you can use it. Like it's still got layers and similar solid primitives, but the power is for a lot of people in Grasshopper, but for me it was in the command line and some of the things that it reintroduced to that type of environment. So it was a really nice union of design logic mixed with like systematic thinking, if you want to. So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
fun sort of breakaway from Revit, if anything.
Nice. I'm okay. So the next part of your story, I think, is you kind of breaking out of, and I'm sure it started off maybe as kind of a side hustle and then turned into a full time thing that you're offering as a consultant and even now teaching. But like, how did that come about for you, and why did that become the decision that you went with?
Sure, yeah. So I guess I naturally began this trajectory when I launched my YouTube channel. So I think at the time I was working for a small practice in Sydney. There was only about 30 people, and there was just no time to produce any training content, basically. It's a small business, like training is a
Hmm.
massive overhead unless you do it through a platform that already exists. And I think my boss at the time and one of my friends said, hey, like, why don't you just make some stuff for fun outside the company walls? It's fine,
Why don't you
manager
just
won't
do
mind.
more work after work, Gavin?
Yeah, it was. I guess they were like they sort of opened my eyes to the fact that there was a bigger world out there that I could engage with, because my manager at the time was quite in touch with the market movements around BIM. Like, so he said Andrew Anagnost, and I was like, who's that? And he's like, CEO of Autodesk. Like, I wasn't really that.
Hmm.
I didn't have my eyes that open at that point to who was who and what was what and where everyone was and what was going on at that level. And YouTube, yeah, became this weird little thing that I just did on weekends and smashed out a few videos. I mean, my first few videos, I think I'm staring down the whole time, talking to the ground. I wasn't a natural. But over time, I think I got my first comment and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, okay, maybe people actually want this sort of thing. And yeah, it sort of grew after a year, I think, to 1,000 subscribers, which was crazy at the time for me. I'd been watching the Revit kid, Jeffrey Pinheiro, for a
Mhm.
while, and he was like pretty much my role model in the space that I sort of tried to emulate in my own style and content. But it was weird to just get engagement, and I think eventually he reached out to me through LinkedIn and just said, "Hey, like, cool stuff," and I was like, this is crazy, and I suddenly went, wait a second, there's like a I can be more than just, my 9 to 5 self. And that sort of got me thinking about, the 9 to 5, and is it what I want to do? Is it
Mm.
working for me? And I thought, what if I could be more flexible? And that sort of got me thinking about consulting. And that point, I already had people coming to me saying, I love this video. Can you do like this for me, but like do this as well? And I'm like, I haven't got time. Sorry. Like, I'm too busy. And I didn't even realize they were probably willing to pay money as well. It was a sort of natural
No,
thing I
I'm too
missed.
busy
And
doing
then
this thing that I don't get paid for.
yeah, yeah, I'm already used to not getting paid. So I just naturally just found my way into the space, and I just jumped in head first. And then I think about a week after I started, like, the pandemic hit. So it was obviously a terrible thing to happen, but for a business jumping in digital consulting, I had immediate flexibility,
Mm.
and all the companies were suddenly looking for different ways of engaging with the market, and consulting seemed to be a way a lot of them were considering at the time. I did a lot of templating and systems management for medium to large firms, and eventually found my way to Architectus, where I work currently as a client. So they began with me as a 1 day engagement per week. And over time, I sort of gradually shifted once I realized there was a bigger opportunity here, with a fairly high level role that could deploy strategy across, 700 people at a company. But yeah, consulting was a rush. I really enjoyed it. It was good money as well. I won't lie. If people are looking to go into consulting, if you have a personal brand, it's definitely a viable business avenue, as long as you have the market fit. That's the important part. But yeah, I sort of found my way back to practice eventually through it. But engaged the market in a way in which I wanted to. So I almost set the terms of my role when I jumped in and said, they gave me a contract, and I said, yeah, not quite, and proposed some changes. And it was a different way of engaging companies. So yeah, it was a rush. I loved it.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in person events and a podcast co hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company AVAIL, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. I think it's worth going into that because I agree, but I also think people would like to hear why you said that.
Mm. Yeah, personal brand for me has been a complete change for not only how I engage with the industry, but how the industry can engage with me.
Mm.
So by putting myself out there and not really hiding behind too many logos or brands, and putting my face on video, being very present on LinkedIn and those sorts of platforms, I found that it helped give me a layer of authenticity, but also, I guess, the ability to be respected by my peers that wasn't really available before. So people at firms respect their BIM manager internally, but like, we don't tend to talk to each other too much as BIM managers. Occasionally we might get to the pub and talk to one another, but by putting myself out there as me, I found that, I guess, it helped me build like credibility that goes a long way, and finding career roles and engaging with people, getting software vendors to talk to you and show you what they're up to. It was just such a good decision that I made, and like, I encourage anyone who's willing to put themselves out to try. It's pretty low risk. I mean, obviously, don't tell anyone where you live and all those obvious things, but by being so accessible, you just get a different experience with how the industry engages with you and sees you. And it's always strange going to a conference and someone comes up and just drops you a thank you, and you don't even really know who they are, but you get that sort of I guess you give and you receive sort of thing. I like the idea that yeah, the industry is as big as you make it, I guess. Like, and I found with my personal brand, the industry became huge for me. I can suddenly I guess see the forest for the trees as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to meet the Revit developers through it, and all these things that just wouldn't have happened if I'd just worked 9 to 5 and talked to my Autodesk rep, and that's pretty much my only window into the market. It just was a game changer. And meeting personalities like yourself, John Pearson, all these people, like it was just a such a bigger community than I guess I ever would have realized without putting myself out there and saying, "Hey, this is me. Like, this is what I think. This is what I do. And, you don't have to like it. You don't have to engage with it, but it's me."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a game changer.
It is interesting also when I think about that with the context of what you shared earlier about being an introvert, right? And I wanted to bring this up because I don't consider myself an introvert and I don't consider myself an extrovert. I'm definitely kind of in the middle, and I can be whatever I need to be when I need to be it. And that might be a little bit luxurious because I have a lot of empathy for both sides of that equation, and I also understand how valuable both sides of that equation are. Right, like especially in an architecture firm, coming from my background, it's like you actually need both because like you need to win the work and you need people to do the work, right? And those tend to fall into pretty clear, distinctive roles. But to your what you're doing by putting yourself out there, I think it's. I also want to help people understand that if they are like that, if they are like you, and they tend to be more quiet, you're not just going to go out and announce things, but you're literally just talking to a camera a lot
Yeah,
of times, right? And
exactly.
you're just saying what you're doing on the screen, and you're talking through the logic of it. And by doing that a lot over time, you do definitely get better and better and better at doing it. But you also get a better command of the things that you're doing, and the production and all those things like tangentially, right? But actually putting it out there, and you talked about like this authenticity layer to it. Like it's when people reach out to you, they know who they're getting because you've built this reputation for a long time online, and the only way to do that it was to have started and then to keep at it. And it's funny that you would turn down, maybe you didn't know it at the time, right, paying work, but you were investing in this thing, and it wasn't just something you were doing to attract, you know, somebody to court you to eventually hire you. That may be what happened. Maybe it's happened 3 or 4 times, right? But it's like it's one of those things where it's like you invested and you kept reinvesting in that to make something over time. I think about I think about the podcast like that all the time. It's like this it's never been easy to do, right? And my production values are high, and I like things done a certain way. Um, but it's the big picture. It's the whole story. It's like this is why people listen to hour-long plus conversations on a weekly basis. It's because of the big story arc. It's not the little pieces along the way. And to me, like having that body of work, and you've created one too, is like it's a really amazing byproduct of, and you never even have to really think about it at that scale. Like it's just slowly building over time to become that thing of value. And it's not just valuable to you, it's valuable to the community, it's valuable to people interested in accomplishing the kinds of things that you're teaching them how to do. And I mean, I part of this is just an appreciation that you're doing this kind of a thing, and that I do want to ask you about your branding, like your name, like pretty pretentious, Gavin, I have to say. No, but just I mean, if does this stir up anything for you in regards to what I just said that you think could be helpful for those out there who are just literally toiling away at their thing and not building a network intentionally, unintentionally, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been such a great thing to have that transcends the places I work at. That's probably my favorite thing about having this is like even if I go to another company, because I have jumped around a fair bit, I'll be honest. You lose nearly your full career and your reputation every time you do it. You
Mm-hmm.
become a CV again and like
Mm-hmm.
revert back to a CV and then try it again. CV time. I got tired of that, and it was nice to have that identity that, persists regardless of what you're doing. If I took a break from work for a year, I'd still come back and people might remember me if I'm lucky. So I think that was a big part of it. I mean, like you said, to begin with, I really just sat in front of a camera. I didn't really sit in front of an audience, and even mentally, I don't really put myself in front of an audience when I talk. I just nerd out and just do what I do. And yeah, I think that's just naturally something I always looked at it like. It was a bit strange when you started getting comments and engagements, and you're like, oh, I have to actually, think about how I talk to people and make sure I don't, turn people away from my content. If I don't, if someone comes and disagrees with me, like, let's have a debate. Let's not just go, oh, go away, I don't like you. Some people
Mm-hmm.
don't always handle criticism too well, whereas I've built up a pretty, thick shell through getting a lot of people that don't always agree with what I think, and that's actually why I use LinkedIn. I really enjoy debate, and, challenging people's beliefs and opinions and ideas, and getting a better understanding of my own through it. But I guess yeah, I encourage anyone who's just in that space where they're not necessarily comfortable just jumping on a TED talk, something that extreme. It's a nice starter point.
Right to the top. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you did mention the branding, the name Aussie BIM Guru. Yeah, it is a little bit pretentious looking at it, like, I don't want to, because some people do actually criticize that in the past. Have said, oh, you think you're that, don't you? You're the guru, you're better than, no, not at all. I enjoy the idea of the guide. I wanted to become like a guide through the
Mm-hmm.
industry. So gurus, yeah, they know a lot. Their focus is on teaching and imparting knowledge onto others, and that's where the guru sort of term to me sort of clicked. And I also respected that a lot of people that were follow there were probably going to be from India as well. So I'm like, this will be a work resonates with them at a cultural level, and they'll appreciate it, and they generally do. They're like, oh, using guru, I love it, awesome.
Nice.
Whereas in the West, obviously, it's got a bit more of a elite sort of association. I mean, I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do, but I don't like to toot my horn.
Own it.
So that was sort
That's
of
right.
the brand. Yeah. But I guess like I've generally had positive engagement with people when it comes to brand, and it's all a name anyway. Like, looking back, I'm like, oh, like, is BIM the right word now? BIM's dead. Should it be
Bim's
the Aussie
dead.
Digital?
Nope.
Yeah, got to commit to it now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I guess
own that too.
on top of that, it's cool to have like a catalog of stuff that I can just share to people when I need to. Like, you probably got the same thing. You're like, oh, I've met this person. I've literally got an episode. Like, check it out. Like, it's like this like library of your own brain that you no longer have to just hold in there all day. You can like sort of put bits and pieces down and almost forget about them yourself and come back to them
Mm-hmm.
later. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
watch some of my own videos when I forget things. I'm like, wait, I've done this before. I forgot about this, but I've got a video. And I watch myself, and people at work are like, are you watching yourself? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I don't remember how to do this. No idea. So for me, it's also just a nice way, like you said, to build up a catalog or a library of parts over time that,
Mm-hmm.
naturally grows into this big thing. Even if it is a little bit unorganized and chaotic, it's YouTube. It's going to be pretty sporadic. But to me, I have that catalog available that I can index when I need to. Yeah, so it's been good for that too.
I hear people who tune into like my Archispeak podcast, which is going, we're on like year 13, and they're like, I started at episode 1 and like now, and I that sounds like torture to me. I know that those were not good episodes, and I also know the quality was not good, and I knew the equipment wasn't good to capture the audio and all those things, and podcasting has gotten a lot more sophisticated over the years and simpler in many ways. Like, we're talking on video call right now. Like, I did that show for almost a decade with no video, right? It was like it was like a phone call, and or like a conference call. And I think it's interesting to have that body of work that you can kind of even self-reflect on. Like, yeah, there's content there. I actually had a listener at one point who was like a principal in a firm say, "Oh, he heard me in a conversation. He's like, "Oh, you didn't used to think that." And I thought that was, oh, that's interesting, because like I don't really keep track of how often I change my mind, but I sure hope I do. And it's kind of neat that there's a record there that I have oh yeah, I do update how I think about things over time. I don't hold on to them forever. And I thought, oh, that was just kind of a cool reminder for him to actually say that at that point in time. But it's
Yeah,
also one of those things where Yeah, it's like a timeline on the internet. Like I hope it doesn't get used for evil, but it's, having my voice out there for that for a very long time. I'm sure could be used in many different ways, but it's one of those things where it's like I think about it, and maybe you think about it this way too. It's like, oh no, it's just whatever I'm doing right now, and you're right. I'll pull out. Oh yeah, I've talked to this person. Oh yeah, they were on the show. I'll put a link to that. You should. People say you should have this person on the show. I'm like, I've had him on the show. Here's a link to it, right? And it's because they have picked it up since then, right? And they didn't go back to episode one and start listening, but it's just kind of a weird. It's a weird thing, but at the same time, it's a really cool thing to have out there. And I would also echo what you said. I would encourage people to do that and just kind of do whatever is interesting to you. There's a book I read years ago called "We Are All Weird," and it's a Seth Godin book. And like the internet opens up you to an audience, and the goal is to connect with the other weirdos out there because we are all weird. And like there's definitely a group of weirdos close enough to what you're weird about to come together and build a community. And
Yeah.
that's a big reason why I encourage people to go out and do this, because you think like, oh, this doesn't have, you don't need mass appeal. Like there's no such, who cares about mass appeal? It's about actually connecting with people.
100%.
The
Yeah, like
thing
I
that
found
I've,
that on my channel.
have you?
I was
Yeah.
looking, I was looking for those people. Like people are like, oh, you should have like 5 million subs and all. I'm like, I don't want 5 million subs. Like, I want to find those people that are resonating on my level. And if it's like only a few of them, that's okay. Like it's still worked for me. I'm more than happy if more people watch my stuff. Cool, like as long as it helps them. But yeah, finding your weirdos is definitely like
Yeah.
a really cool part about doing this. Like I've really managed to, I think at this point, almost come across most of the people like me that are comfortable being in that space, and collaborated with many of them and just got to
Mm-hmm.
know who they are. And whilst I haven't met a lot of them in person, I'm sure one day I will. Like Nicholas Cotillier, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I should have a chance to meet him quite soon. Fingers crossed. Based on some events, but so it's been a really good way to just find my tribe, per se, but figure out what I want that to be as well. And you were mentioning before the timeline, the ability to self-reflect on this, that's definitely relevant for me. I've literally come back to some workflows multiple times across my YouTube series and approached them in different ways. And it's helped me, I guess, appreciate that, yeah, it is a journey. Like you do begin in different places, and it's kept me humble as well, because I wouldn't, get to the point I'm at now and go, oh, you should just do it the way I'm doing it right now. Because a lot of people do that in programming. They just say you should just start with, C sharp and call it a day. And I'm like, I know that's not how people work in most places. It's just not possible for people. And it wasn't for me. And I've got the videos sitting there reminding me of the way I used to do things to keep me humble and say, you know what, you used to be like that too. You weren't just working the way you are now.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps me stay pretty grounded. And some of the videos are quite funny too to rewatch. Ones like, oh, this is why Dynamo is better than Python. And I'm like, oh, why did they make that video? Not going to age well.
Well,
And then
again,
I had
it's also good. You show that you could change your mind.
yeah. And I had one like, why is Python better than C sharp? And I'm like, now I'm going to have to make one, why is C sharp better than the rest? So it
Well, the
keeps me grounded, and yeah.
perfect segue. I mean, talk about
Yeah,
what you're working on now when it comes to your YouTube channel and
sure.
this. I mean, C sharp and you're doing. Are you doing live streams? Tell us what you're up to.
Not at the moment. I haven't really cracked the whole live stream recipe and timing. I still enjoy the ability to sort of just pump a video out and release it when it's ready, sort of thing. But yeah, C sharp. So I used Python and PyRevit for the better part of like 2.5 years. And a lot of people told me during that time, you should go to C sharp, try it out.
Mm.
And I tried it, it didn't click. It is a difficult language, I think, to approach if you're not naturally inclined to thinking the way the language encourages you to think, which is very much in an application sense. So lots of parts coming together to build this like product. Whereas Python's sort of like almost like in the Matrix where he says, oh, guns, and this huge rack of guns rolls out, and you've got 5 million libraries to draw upon, really jankily from people. I enjoyed that side of Python. C sharp is a lot more programmatic. You're deploying an app, it has to work, it's got to have dependencies considered. But I actually broke into C sharp using ChatGPT. That was literally where I started learning C sharp. I just started conversating with our chatbot at work, who's a private facing GPT, but still roughly at that level. And I realized it was pretty good at working with code, and writing code and responding to code and modifying code. And I just finally figured out those first few building blocks in C# that you need to get started, because there's a lot of things you have to get right in a project of C#, of the C# language, to get your add-in to even run in the first place. So that was where I usually got stuck. Like one of those 50 things you needed to line up just didn't line up, and the whole thing threw an error at me. And I'm like, oh, finally had this co-pilot that could tell me, oh, this is where you went wrong. Don't worry, we got this. And eventually, I ran my add-in, it worked. John Pearson, he also recommended a really good template to me, by a guy called Roman on GitHub, the Nice Point template. And that saved a lot of the hurdles that you have to jump over to get into a C# project. So once I was in, I naturally saw the parallels to Python. Python's almost like an abstraction of C in principle, and C# is a lesser abstraction of C. It's got some benefits over C, but they're very similar. And at that point, it was just an easy switch for me. It was just those things I couldn't before. They were blocking me from really getting into it. So I've started pretty much doing C# every week on the channel, and I'm trying to build people up through what I see as a fairly methodical process of getting towards an add-in that works in Revit in a similar way to Dynamo or Python. Like, it's very delivery focused. And it's almost me just redocumenting my steps one lesson at a time and building a series that I don't think I found when I was trying to learn. There's a lot of great resources, but most of them said, let's begin by building our add-in system. And you spend like all this time doing all this stuff that doesn't translate into a working application until lesson 20 or something like that. I said, no, we've got to get in faster than that to give people that reward. So I guess a lot of what I do on YouTube, especially with C# now, is I like to see that I'm sort of holding the ladder down for everyone and saying, come on, get up, we're going to the next thing. But I've got the ladder, I'm on the helicopter saying, no, wait, there's still people coming. So I sort of hold myself intentionally back a little bit from the leading edge of what's going on. And this is my motive with C#. I want to bring that opportunity for other Python developers and Dynamo developers. They now have like a ladder they can climb before the AI agents all come and completely, pull the carpet out from under our feet.
You're on borrowed time, Gavin, because this is all going to be unnecessary soon. Hey everyone, let's take a quick break from the conversation to pay some bills around here. This episode of Troxel is brought to you by Troxel Plus members. That's right, my incredible paid supporter members are making this episode possible. Their direct support ensures that I can continue exploring the intersection of architecture, technology, and the future of design with the leading voices in our industry directly to you. So let's talk about why you might consider financially supporting the podcast too. By becoming a Troxel Plus supporter, you're not just helping sustain these conversations, you're also gaining exclusive benefits like ad-free episodes of the show and my Leadership Edge email newsletter, where I analyze episodes and deliver the insights and key takeaways right into your inbox. Your small contribution makes a huge impact. And if you've been enjoying Troxel and want to be part of the community that keeps it thriving, please consider joining today. Head on over to trxl.co and click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I've put into the show notes. Once again, my sincerest thanks to the Troxel Plus members who have made this episode of the podcast possible, even though they aren't even hearing this ad because theirs are ad-free. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Now, I applaud what you're doing, and I think what's so interesting about the YouTube today, right, is that you can learn anything you want to learn from who you want to learn it from, and that to me is an incredible thing that exists. And I mean, it takes people to say, I'll put myself out there, I'll do that thing, and again, it can be super niche and weird, right? And it can, I mean, not that this is weird, but it can be super niche and still gain the right community around it who's willing to go on that journey with you, and that's super cool.
Yeah, and I found the community around C# is quite strong as well. And I think once I sort of signified to them, hey, I'm in this space and I'm doing this, a lot of them have reached out and given me heaps of really cool tips. So I've got a toolbar on GitHub that's open and public And through that, I've got a lot of feedback behind the scenes saying, "Oh, I noticed you did this. Have you thought about this? Have you seen this package?" And it's sort of like rediscovering a Dynamo community that's a little bit more covert than the Dynamo
Hmm.
community. They have like forum to some degree, but they're honestly just all such busy people building apps that they don't really have that come together environment naturally. So I found it's given me I guess, a different window into the industry and all the work that all these add-in developers have been doing over the years without AI. My gosh, like that's hard
Yeah.
work. It's given me a respect for, I guess, those developers as well. But I've been conversing with a lot of people like John Pearson, Sean Page, some people that are really heavy in the C# space, and it's been fun to, I guess, talk to people at a different level that I wasn't at before in programming and have like more natural conversations, and also read Jeremy Tamek's Builder Coder blog and actually understand what it says. Like, it was a pretty cool moment because I used to go to Jeremy's blog and I'd always get halfway and go, I have no idea what any of this code means. I know I need it, but I don't know how it works. And now I can look at it and go, oh, I actually understand, half of this at least.
Mm,
Yeah. So it's been
nice.
it's sort of like, the Matrix. I sort of see the Matrix for what it is now. It's one of those sort of moments, but
Another Matrix reference. Good. One of my favorites. I'm curious if you could just give a kind of an idea of like what kinds of things you're building with C Sharp so that people could understand why they might want to look into what you're teaching them on YouTube.
sure. So, I mean, a large part of what I'm building is probably still quite delivery focused. Once you get into design tasks, you deal with geometry, and geometry is much harder. Like, you're using pretty raw mathematics when you get to like the geometry tasks. So like, I mean, probably the main geometry task that I built early on, for example, is the classic task of you've got a topography and you want to put paving onto it. So you sit there and you pull points onto the topo until it doesn't go through the topo. So I just built that as a actual task. You just pick a floor, it puts a grid in it, and it puts it onto the floor.
Wow.
But like the main things that I've built that have resonated at my company are generally toolkits really tap into those pain points. So, for example, we have used various batch printers and exporters over the years, and you have to get all the settings right. You have to distribute them through very awkward ways, like sending files to each other or getting some file on a server and hoping that it works in the next version. And I said, I'll build you an exporter. It does PDF, DWG, NWC, IFC, and it's got pre-built naming standards that we can share as a company at the company level very easily. So like we built that, for example, and we do a lot of exporting in architecture, unfortunately, but it resonated because people were like, oh, okay, we own this printer now. We can change it. We can make it what we want it to be. One really popular one I made is a room layout sheet creation toolkit. So when you do hospital jobs, every room has to be documented on like an A3 page. Highly wasteful. You spend like half the project just documenting rooms, basically. So I just said, we can automate that 100%. But the way that I built the toolkit was very different to the other apps we'd used before that try to do this. So most of them try to build the entire sheet all at once, and the views just get put on the sheet and they have no idea that they belong to a room layout sheet or a room. So I built in a relationship system where the views and the sheets all know, okay, I actually belong back to this room. And if this room's name changes, I can like push the name change back to all these elements that relate to it. So we built a much more intelligent approach to just holding all that data together and making it so that you can like create views and it'll know there's already a floor plan. I'm not going to make it again because I already exist on the sheet over here. So building intelligence that doesn't exist at the Revit level, that's a lot of the tools I build, or taking advantage of features that aren't exposed in Revit naturally to the user. One of them's a funny one that there's you might have seen when people use Revit, they often do this big marquee across the whole model screen and they say they want to select all the walls and they'll select everything in the entire model and then they'll filter down to walls and it takes like a long time. So Autodesk has this thing in their API that lets you filter your selection before you make it, but it's just not really used in Revit naturally. But it's all sitting there behind the scenes ready to use and you can select everything super fast and it gives you access to just things that Revit naturally doesn't give you for some reason by default. So yeah, but lots of random stuff in there. Like I could go on and on and on, but a lot of the typical bread and butter tasks, but then some more fringe things as well.
Nice.
That, yeah, you wouldn't always think of. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that go let's just go back. Let's just
Mm,
jump to
mm,
the high level again. I mean, this whole idea of kind of navigating AEC as a programmer, right? And I mean, you went to traditional architecture school, now you're working at a company doing custom add-ins for Revit using C Sharp, and you're documenting, teaching other people how to do that on YouTube.
Mm,
Whoa, like, okay, you never saw that coming, right?
not at all.
Never.
Yeah.
And you've kind of gained some notoriety along the way because of these, things that you've put out into the world.
Mm,
um I mean, just if I just, this is your story, right? And
mm,
how that happened could not have been planned out in advance, right? This is something that kind of happened organically along the way, with some, raising your hand for, making your own opportunities through the agency of creating your YouTube channel, being prompted by other people to, a little bit of a push that you should do this, and then you doing it. I mean, there's a lot of ingredients that have gone into what this is, but you're definitely like a well-known individual in AEC technology, and I mean, you've accomplished a lot, and you're way younger than I am, and you're well on your way to doing a lot more, right? So, really, really cool story, but just curious to hear kind of your, when you hear it presented that way. I mean, you live it. I mean, maybe you think about this more often than I just put it out there, but like this,
mm.
if you're encouraging other people, like architecture, maybe they're being trained as architects, maybe not, right? But
Mm.
and you've chosen to stay in AEC this whole time too, and you didn't have to do that. I think that's also kind of an interesting point, right? So, and not even going out just to do the software like a lot of people have who are in this piece of the industry. They leave to go into tech, right? And they are
Mm.
part of a startup and all these things. And anyway, I'm just throwing all that out there because I'm
No, no,
curious to hear your feedback.
it's a great lead in. I guess yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't stay in AEC, and I've had opportunities presented to me to leave, or to go sideways, like way sideways, like software vendors and
Hmm.
developers, and uh, I guess unfortunately I just love working with architects. That's my that's my
Unfortunately.
poison. I empathize with them. I've been one. I don't feel so much as an architect anymore, but like they are my people, I guess
Mm.
is the way I see it. But I guess yeah, a lot of what I do have to think, how do I relate this back to people just getting started now, or people that haven't found their place in the industry just yet? And I always usually impart a few common tips. I mean, one is to look at what is going on at the bleeding edge of the industry and try to figure out what that might look like in like 5 years, like if it was the way things were going to normally be, and which parts of those things would you want to make a part of your skill set if you didn't have to convince your boss it was just a logical thing.
Hmm.
AI will be a game changer for the industry, and like architecture is probably, I don't know if I'd say under threat, but it's going to be heavily transformed if the right pieces of tech get delivered the way that people are promising they will. Whether that happens, we'll see, but I'm sure it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Um, I always encourage people to sort of look at what everyone else is doing around them. And if everyone's doing the same thing, don't do that, because like you'll just end up doing that and eventually it won't be relevant. So if everyone's, you know, learning Revit and that's it, like there's got to be more to it than, and that's sort of like underpinned my own choices along the way. I've tried to find things that not everyone's doing and say, okay, like BIM, literally getting into BIM, that was for me the start of that. Like, oh, not everyone really cares about BIM. Well, I do, because like, there's going to be a need for this. And I think programming was also that moment. I said, okay, this isn't something I see very often around me. And whilst I also enjoyed it, I recognized it's got power, it's got agency, that, you have more control, the things that you wouldn't have otherwise. And the software is sort of in charge of you if you don't know how to program these days, I find. I think as well, don't expect a traditional career path. That's probably a hard lesson that gets taught to you over time in your career. I think that, you're not going to be where you expect to be in 5, 10 years. I'm sure I won't be where I expect to be in 10 years by any means. But don't let the industry tell you what you should be, and don't expect it to either. That's like a pretty hard lesson I try to impart to graduates. Don't seek all the guidance from others. Like you do have to sometimes just take risks and, make decisions that might seem like they're not necessarily going to be the easy choice or the one that is guaranteed just going to work. But that's the only way you really get ahead of the market, by taking those risks and trying to figure out just I guess like which decisions have the potential to pan out well, and knowing what you do if they don't. I guess like I've invested in platforms and ideas before that didn't take off, and businesses closed that I was literally collaborating with behind the scenes. And I went, well, that's a skill set that I just have to put down. But through doing that, I found other people and connections, and it all sort of somehow delivers to you in the end. And if anyone is just trying to seek guidance, I guess I like to tell them you can reach out to people like us. We're pretty accessible. Like we're not like, going to say no and just ignore you in the DMs or whatever. Like I try to be very accessible for the people that need guidance and help. And I won't always get back to you straight away, but like I like to promise to everyone I will reply to you. So try not to find me too scary, I guess. I know I do a lot of debates on LinkedIn, but behind the scenes, I'm a nice guy, I promise. Yeah, so a whole bunch of tips in there. But, yeah.
You got a mean bite there, yeah, on LinkedIn.
Occasionally, yeah. And I guess I self-reflect sometimes, saying, like, will I be in the industry in 5 years, 10 years? Who knows? I mean, I don't know if my boss watches, but hi if he does. I have to constantly sound check myself, saying, is there different things that I'm not looking at right now that could be a different opportunity? Like, should I go into video game architecture, or go completely left field and just see where it takes me? But it's a temptation that's always there. But I guess I like to think that I take this as far as I can before I really do a quantum leap. In my head, I know that probably one day the industry is going to force me into some sort of situation like that, through just transforming so much that those connections become so obvious or necessary.
Mm-hmm. You missed that whole metaverse train. That thing took off.
Yeah, luckily I just waited for the next train for that one.
Right. Yeah, you never know. Well, this has been a great conversation. Everybody needs to go over to the Aussie BIM Gurus YouTube channel and subscribe. Subscribe to Troxel while you're there. He has way more subscribers than this podcast does on YouTube, for sure. And this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, and I'm going to put a link to you on LinkedIn so everyone can read your spicy comments. Anything else? Anywhere else they can go to get more Gavin?
That's the main place. You're welcome to email me as well, aussiebimguru@gmail.com. If you've got like a more technical question, I'm happy to take those. If you send a script, I'll usually look at it. So, but yeah, no, I'd just like to thank you for having me on the show. Like I said at the start, it's surreal to be able to engage with you in this medium and be on the show that I always watch and listen to these days. And I really admire the work that you do and the people that you give people access to, and that you give them access to more people through being able to talk about their ideas here. So I really appreciate being a part of that collection of people that you've given that opportunity to. So thank you.
Nice. Thank you for saying that, and let's do it again.
Yeah, certainly. Take care.
Before you take off, I want to wrap up this episode and revisit two main themes that stood out to me from today's conversation. The first one is about Gavin choosing to stay in AEC instead of leaving for tech. He makes a clear, conscious choice to stay. That decision speaks volumes in a time when so many technologists are exiting the industry due to burnout, lack of innovation, or better pay elsewhere. This is important for AEC tech leaders trying to retain and elevate talent. It hits the core of a major issue: why talented individuals should stay and how firms can enable that. Gavin is an outlier in this regard. It's uncommon to hear someone with programming chops and a YouTube following choose AEC on purpose. His story makes the argument compelling, and this should be a topic of conversation in firm leadership meetings. The second one is about personality traits, aka the introvert's guide to making an impact. I think Gavin's story is deeply human and relatable to many of my podcast audience. Many in AEC are introverts by nature, especially those in BIM, tech, or technical roles. And Gavin's self-awareness, humility, and approachability create an empowering narrative. You don't have to be loud to lead. His story offers a roadmap. Start small, be consistent, speak to the camera, not the crowd. And his brand-building journey is proof that introverts can thrive publicly without changing who they are. What makes this theme particularly powerful is its relevance both within our industry and beyond AEC. The approach to content creation and public sharing provides a valuable model for professionals at any level. We see excellent examples of channels producing impactful content across all generations, from Gen Z to boomers, and you don't have to be an extrovert to do it. That's all for this episode. Tell me what you think by clicking the feedback link in the show notes or leave me a comment on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to our members this week. Find out how you can become a member at trxl.co, and I'll talk to you again next week.